My name is David Travis. I've been a curator of photography for 36 years, and I have the privilege of interviewing Arno Minkkinen, who is an incredible photographer if you haven't seen his work, and I think you have. So he's also a writer. This is good for me because he has explained himself very well elsewhere. So we're going to rely on him to remember how to do that. But the first thing I'm going to ask him is, well, he wrote something that was like a little aphorism. And it said, "Don't ask me, ask my eyes." But today we are going to ask you. So there'll be some visuals of the pictures. But I want to start by saying that we are 50 years from the time he took a remarkable picture that seems to have started his career along the lines we know it now. He was struggling to be a young photographer and to learn as much as he could. And he went to a workshop in Millerton, New York, where famous photographers would be. And he wasn't having a good time. So I'm going to let him explain it, but he did take a picture. I will hold up the picture I'm referring to here. This is from his enormous book celebrating his 50 years. So Arno, tell me about that incident, because it seems to be the first step toward where you ended up.
Thank you, David. It's an honor and a great pleasure to be speaking with you, and the several years I think it's already been that I've had a chance to get to know you through your writings, your books, and also the pleasure I've had in watching some of the work you do as a photographer as well, with swimmers in Lake Michigan. So for me, this photograph does represent the starting point. It's when I came to the realization that the experiments that I had been working on a year before, while I was a copywriter on Madison Avenue, writing for Minolta cameras, and wanting to become a photographer, I had written a line that went, what happens inside your mind can happen inside a camera. And I started to believe that, and I realized that I really should consider seriously maybe trying to see if I could be a photographer. I read an advertisement in the New York Times, and yeah, it listed famous photographers like Robert Frank and Bruce Davidson and Paul Caponigro, as well as Dion Arbus. And I was advised to go to the Museum of Modern Art and see some of the work, because I didn't know who any of them were. And it was Arbus's work that floored me, literally. The picture of the little boy with the toy hand grenade resembled me when I came in 1951 to America with my parents and to Brooklyn from Finland as an immigrant boy who couldn't speak a word of English and who looked very funny in his face because he had a cleft palate and dented nose, and it was in bad shape at that point still. And so I said, I want to study with this person. And I applied, I got in and into the workshop, and 2 weeks before it was to start, came the news that it was canceled. This was the year where she decided to leave this world. And so I never met her. And a man named John Benson was the second teacher I was able to then work with a little bit later that same summer. And 2 days into the workshop, I showed him all the kind of pictures I was taking when I was a copywriter of horses and cows and things like that. And I gave him more of the horses and cows. And he just kind of shook his head and thought maybe I could get my money back. This wasn't the right place, for the kind of things I was showing him. And I said, no, I can't do that. Give me a better idea. And so he said, well, and he thought a bit, and he said, well, why don't you take a day off? And it's that day off that resulted in this picture. because what I did, I took the day off that Wednesday 5-day workshop. Imagine that, 20% of the workshop gone. I found a mirror that was behind a barn that day on Wednesday and took it up to a hill and said to myself, what do I look like without any clothes on? And I'm sure that came from Arbus. I was doing an Arbus assignment in my imagination. And so I put the mirror on the ground and I had the camera pointing at it. And I kind of said to myself, well, let me use the self-timer to take this picture. And I didn't point the camera at me directly. So already I was bypassing the actuality of my nudity into a reflection that turned out to be in the sky, that turned out to be like someone standing in front of their grave. And it's really, I find today, looking at that picture, and so happy you began with that the things that I'm doing in these last few years, I've returned to that picture. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how you feel about that, whether knowing some of the recent work I do you think I've returned to that picture?
Oh, I think you have. And I think you've learned what the picture can tell you. I mean, we think as photographers, we're going to be in control of what happens. Well, we know better. When I do swimmers, they're diving in or something, and they go so fast, I can't see what's happening. So I turn the burst mode, and then I find out later what I saw or what the camera saw. So it is about what the camera sees. So right. That picture is so compelling as a kind of look into the grave aspect, because you mount it and show it upside down. Yeah. It took me a while to figure this out, because you're standing there, and I said, okay, took the picture. Where's the camera? It's a mirror. I thought, oh, yes, it's upside down. So the picture has its own life, and once we show it to the world, it's gone. It belongs to the viewer. Yeah. So we better know what the picture is showing everybody. So it was a kind of epiphany to me. That I said, oh my God, it's upside down. Okay, any view camera photographer would know lots of pictures are upside down because that's very smart. But I don't use a view camera, so I'm handicapped in that regard. So there was a kind of aha, oh, I got it. But that remains in all of your work, because there's something in the work that you don't see, or you don't see in the normal way. And then you say, he's standing there between the birch trees. I didn't see that. He's supposed to be in every, I'm looking for him, I can't find him. Well, he's the same tonality as the birch trees, so he's invisible. Sometimes you're a silhouette, right. It's easy to see. So I think it was a pretty good starting picture, so to speak. And it did lead you to, as I understand, be accepted at the Rhode Island Institute of Design, right. Finally, because you told Harry Callahan, I want to continue doing what I started in Millerton. So tell me a little bit about your experience at RISD, because you were surrounded, well, for a year you had Harry Callahan and Aaron Siskin, the two greatest, the best team of teaching photography ever to walk the earth. And then the students, and then you had some other fill-ins when Harry went on sabbatics. So what did you gain from that? What did you gain from Harry, Aaron, and the students?
Sure. Just a really quick on the upside down, which it comes out of the view camera, because that's what I took up to Pyron, to the workshop, thinking that I would learn to use my father's old Lindhoff 4.5, which got me the job as a copywriter, by the way. But in any case, so I was developing also films like that. So when I looked at this particular, it was on 35 millimeter, and I'm taking it off the reel, I'm seeing it coming up the way I first saw it. And I said, that's the picture. Thinking that might work, and that it would be visible, of course, that I did it upside down. Contrary to everything ever since then, is that nothing gets manipulated in the image itself. But with Harry was he was like my father. My dad had passed maybe 4 or 5 years before that. And he took that role in a way that became evident to me as the support that he gave me for my work. I could illustrate this way, maybe. We all had to hang a bunch of photographs for our crit every 2 weeks. We'd have to put up a bunch of pictures, and everybody did that. Some dry mounted and matted them and put them up. And Harry would go to the end of the room. It was a long corridor room. He'd go to the end of the room where the pictures began, and he would walk all the way up to where his seat was at the other end, at a table, looking at each picture before he said anything. He'd sit down. And I couldn't produce that many pictures. I had no way, and I didn't want to fail him and put up things that I knew didn't work, or where you could see how I did it, or you could see something that wasn't magical. So I decided, I saw that he liked to walk. So I put one at the end of the room and one at the other end of the room. And he had to walk in any case. And once after, a class, and we went to a local bar, and he would sometimes join us. And he pulled me aside. This is maybe half a year later. And he says, don't stop the way you're working. If that's how you want to do it, it's working. For me, it's working. And then he said to me, it's not going to be easy for you. Mm-hmm. And I nodded my head, and I knew what he meant, because I was showing some pretty stark nudes, and I'm a man, and this is America. And I think that's what he was referring to. Aaron, for his part, wanted me to bring structure to the work, kind of like as if I was taking a screenwriting course, and have a through line. And so I created a portfolio called White Underpants of 20 pictures. And there were 20 portfolios that were made, wherein some of the famous, you could call them, well, book cover images today even are in that portfolio, their first iteration. But it was Harry who was the one who became a personal friend in many ways when we met, and the little letters that I have from him, postcards. And he came to Finland, where we hosted Harry and Eleanor, set him on a trip to St. Petersburg. And so there was this kind of attachment throughout Harry's life. And I never tried to, make, what would I say? I always wanted to respect his privacy and his personal life. I didn't want to be constantly writing or anything like that. So they were far and few between, these letters, but it was kind of like the pictures, they're far and few between the good ones, as he said. You don't get very many of them in your lifetime.
So you graduated and a job teaching in Finland. Hello, you could speak Finnish. Then you came back to the States and worked again in advertising, but then you got to MIT. Yep. And it seems like you were really on the path when you got there. So say a little bit about that experience, then we'll get into when you're really digging and doing your work.
Kind of a fallback. I always loved advertising. I didn't have a problem so much with it. Occasionally there were clients I didn't want to write about and nearly got fired for that. But the MIT years were fantastic. They as you're saying, I mean, they opened up the possibility of not only defining my teaching strategies that I already had in Finland, which were maybe in a short way of saying the Finnish students, when I came there, it was like the country was 35% communist and the students were 85% communist. And when you have that, you can give an assignment that they bring in, and you ask, who took this picture, and the answer will be, we all did. Oh. And that happened once, and afterwards, I started to talk about pictures individually and analyze them, and said, I started to see the pattern of one person who had a way of shooting. And as he was leaving near the end of the classroom, I said, nice work. And he smiled. And then a year later, things started to kind of change. So I started an individualized teaching program there. And I took that then when I was hired at MIT to heart, and try to really get to know the students personally, find out the motivations, work with them the way Harry worked with me. But I want to nurture nurture was what Harry did. I want to nurture what they're doing. I want to find out what's good in what they're doing. I want to push the positive instead of always teaching from the point of view where that's great, but the but kills anything great, you say.
Yeah. I've seen it. As a historian and a curator, I sat I did teach at Columbia College in Chicago for 11 years after I retired. And I was busier than I ever was at the museum, because I had 50 students in this history of photography class. Oh my God. And I had to figure out how to teach. But it was interesting that, the but that kills it, because they're fragile in some way in what they're tentatively trying to do. That tentative part where you're trying to get it to work, you can't do the buts then. You have to do what Harry did. He said, oh, well, just keep going, just keep going. So it brings up the point of how your pictures, at one point, it looks like the nature you choose is the background, and there you are. And at another point, it looks like Robinson Jeffers used to say, there would be beauty if there were no people on Earth. And then you are trying to find your place in that world. So do you go both ways with that? It's a background, and now you're a person who said, I'm going to be here alone taking the pictures. I think you should mention how you do that. There's no assistant there. And that I'm going to try to find my place in this. I don't know, maybe both things are happening at once.
Yeah. So put the dichotomy together one more time.
Well,
between the two things.
If you followed the strict Robinson Jeffers poem, he said there would be this heartbreaking beauty, even if there were no hearts to break for.
It's a beautiful line.
If we weren't on Earth, this would be beautiful.
Yeah.
This would be sensational. And it's true. If people disappeared from Earth, it would still do its thing.
Yeah.
Okay. We decide we decide what beauty is. It doesn't tell us. But so if you're a person, say, who is shy, has a cleft palate, it wants to, is tending toward a hermit side of life, and restricted within yourself somewhat, since you described that a little bit in your writing. Are you finding your place in the earth, in this beautiful place, this curious place? Or equally, you come to it as a welcoming thing and you say, thank you for being the background of what I'm going to do.
I love the way you describe those things. I was glad I asked you to round it out again, because it is the both. I believe in things are new. There are new things that have yet to exist. Not just in science or mathematics or all sorts of areas, but within photography. Sometimes people say, well, everything's already been done. And I don't believe in that at all. Whether it's in students who are really exploring or in my own work, but where the beauty of the world is the thing that certainly draws me to a step in that I try not to invent a picture right away. I scout around. I leave the camera where it is. I walk around. I feel this is like, let's put me on an island in Finland and I take my clothes off only once, right? And now I'm walking around with bare toes, walking around, and then I maybe coming back to the camera, I'm already checking off in my mind pictures where I want to go back to, and I start from those, and then I still don't quite know what it is, and it's in the interaction with the body being able. Could I do this? It's always this. Could I do something where the camera would only see this. And because I don't know what the camera would see when I take the picture, right? There are no assistants. And there are a couple of exceptions. There are funny ones and nice ones. I deputize someone when my self-timer breaks or something. They have to count and close their eyes, and I'm witness to that. But I have to do the picture. I have to figure out how to get the image and how to shoot it. And as the photographer, I don't know if there's a photographer there. There's a camera there. I make the camera the photographer. And in that process, I'm suddenly realizing that that's not the thing that's going to work here. Something else. This tree or this sandbank or this mountain cliff is going to help provide the answer to a picture I've never seen. And I'm looking for that. If I get a picture coming up with the digital, what has happened is I can see what can be improved, what can be changed. And I think it has spurred the work to where it is now, where I'm able to make pictures like one that I did at the Maroon Bells. And here there were witnesses. These were students who had to get up 5 a.m. if they wanted to see how I work, because I wasn't going to take class time to do my work from them. And we went out in a van, and it was freezing glacial water, even though it was summer. I had gone there before the workshops began to scout it out and watched how the sun climbed up from behind. And as it rose, the shadow dropped off the Maroon Bells. And there was like a window of 10 minutes where I saw the image. Now I just needed to find the rock. And I wasn't sure about where that actually would be, but I took the kids anyway. And I figured if I failed, they would see a failure. If I succeeded, they'd see a success. And so there they see this guy, their professor. I wasn't professor at Anderson Ranch, but still a professor in his underpants. I wouldn't go nude in front of people that way, right? In the water, freezing, his butt off, shivering, trying to do this picture. They had no idea what it was. I don't let them take pictures of me because I tell them I don't want to see one that's better than mine. But so the camera's in the water in the tripod, and I got the self timer in my hands in a bulb that goes under in the water. I've learned how to sink the line down, and I try, and it's so difficult and painful. And I look and I don't have it. I look and I bring the camera back to shore. I look and I don't have it. After the third time, I said, I don't know if I can do this. And then I said, all right, one more attempt. I go for the last attempt. I come back and I got it. And I start to cry. And the reason for that is that it was the proof that I work the way I work. And it's an unimaginable image. I've never seen it in my life before. And it speaks to me so much about the love for nature and the planet. I don't know if that gets to the Jeffers, but it's me in communion with that rock, with that landscape. It's my eye speaking, and it describes a lot of experiences like that.
That's interesting. The camera, it is a separate entity, and it doesn't see the way we see. And we don't even see the way birds see because they have ultraviolet vision. And I thought, why is this sight have to be generated by our eyes? Because it's not. So, I mean, that's what Moholy was up to too. He said,
Yeah.
well, experiment, see what the thing will do, see what that was what modernism was. You had to see the medium at work, which is interesting because you can see yourself at work. When the picture is successful, you show them.
Yeah.
And you try to find him, or sometimes you're obvious. And it's like magic, especially when you don't see yourself right away. I said, oh my God, he's behind the tree. Yeah. But all of it, And it reminds me of something that Daniel Borstein wrote. And he said, unlike magic, when these things are shown and you see how they're done, we can still love the idea of the deception of illusion. Huh? We still can see it and we love it. And so that's one of the things about in a way, solving the puzzles of one of your pictures. Not exactly how you did it, but that you're in there somewhere, not hiding, and you're actually there essentially because the picture demands you to be where you are.
You know, photography has changed in its contemporary mode from fascination with that kind of, you couldn't stage it, you couldn't, you know, the veracity of the image itself, where it's the image is kind of becoming an illustration for ideas.
Yeah, you said mine is a solo, assistant-free journey, and that oneness belongs to the reclusive tone in my imagery as a single human being in nature, the place I would hope all of us could see as our primary home.
Yeah.
So you do have a message here, and it's there solidly in your work. Yeah. You can't get away from that. But this idea that it all looks like a complicated setup and it's only you and a 9-second timer. And I thought, no way. I thought, holy cow. But this reclusiveness, does that come from your earlier years?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, it does.
So that's inside you, and you can't really get out there and change all that. I mean, because it works now in your favor.
I think it's really, you know, you touch on this reclusiveness. The source of it is childhood. And, you know, Brancusi has this great quote I always love sharing, is that unless we see with the eyes of the child, we make no art. You know, and I've come to believe that. And I think that the source of this is that childhood wonder and being alone and climbing trees. And I was in the Boy Scouts and loved the waterfront and became a good swimmer and found, you know, loneliness to be a wonderful thing also. Not that I didn't want friends, and not that, you know, finding girls was easy at all. It was really difficult, you know, to find someone. And so that loneliness gets reflected in a way that I wouldn't have imagined when I first started, that I'm actually working from my childhood to create this world, this solo endeavor for such a long time.
You're a little programmatic because you are trying to set something up, but you don't know if it's going to work.
No, of course not. My line was, what happens inside your mind can happen inside a camera. So the camera was listening almost. And so like the one leg in my, you know, which was, and we haven't spoken about the danger. I have been in unbelievably dangerous situations. The fact that it appeared in the camera the way I had imagined it could possibly appear, and it did, and it's one frame. There aren't frames before it, and there aren't frames after it. And many of the good pictures in the early with Callahan, they're like that. That's the negative. That's the print, and that's what I printed. I've actually discovered other pictures on a strip of 6 where I went for the boardwalk with my mouth open, and that's the picture.
Interested to say, you know, that yours was a solo assistant-free journey. Nobody was there to help you, just the technique of a self-timer or something like that. And that puts you there. But this reclusive nature works in your favor because you can stand to be alone, and you can get something done alone, and you can fail alone, and that's fine. You know, you just keep at it. You can't see that in the picture. The camera becomes the photographer because you're the subject now. That makes all those pictures even better. And that almost has to be said to be understood. So now we've said it. Now
Yeah.
we gotta go on. I like this idea that when I saw something on YouTube, and you said, I created a panic. And I thought, my God, I know from swimming how long people can be underwater, not long. And
Yeah.
so I thought, how did he get down there to still the waters? You know, there must have been nothing there. And I thought, well, I got to ask. But, you know, I created a panic, and none of the pictures, maybe the one of you on the hanging down from the ski jump.
Yeah.
Okay, that looks like a panic going on. Okay, but they're all
That picture had no exit strategy.
other than drop.
Yeah. Well, I
Now,
had rope, tied
Yeah.
around my wrists.
Yeah,
I didn't think about how the hell you climb back out. It was hard. It was freezing.
I know. I gotta admire you for that. So this idea of creating a panic is interesting because it's not really revealed in most of the pictures. They're so serene, and it almost looks like you worked and worked on this with the crew, and you knew how to get it right, and you got it in 2 or 3 shots, and that was it. And everybody went home and had lunch. I said, that's not what's happening. There's a panic going.
Yeah, there is. It's the fear part. I mean, there's one image in Haight, Utah, where I saw the possibility, walking around first and coming back and say, there's a picture. And I'm telling myself, no, there's not a picture. You're not doing that, Arno. You're not doing that. But there's a picture there. There's a picture there. You're not doing it. And the next morning, I'm out there making sure there's no cars around it. It's a parking lot area, kind of, a lookout kind of area that was very remote. And, and that kind of picture, you can't have anybody around. I mean, if it fails, you die, and nobody will be around for that. But that was the kind of picture this was. And I said, I know I can do it. I know I can do it. I set it all up. I frame it. I'm taking my clothes off. I said, no, do it. Don't do it. And I do it.
I wouldn't be getting next to the edge. I wouldn't want to be with you when you're doing that. But there's this geometry, and it's a geometry that's unsuspected. I mean, we see the branches of the tree, and then we see you trying to be in them. And I thought, we wouldn't really look at those branches much unless you were there. I thought, oh, it's unexpected.
Yeah.
And you have the experience of other pictures that succeeded, but they all have to be different. So, I mean, does it sometimes come out better than you think it will?
Yeah, that can happen. And certainly this idea, I mean, I had this sort of mantra, which I teach also, is make it different, keep it the same. So that we're not looking at the same picture. I don't just this one body doing this. And the geometry comes as the after effect. I'm not looking for the geometry as much as for this kind of Robert Pujaw describes what I do as being, creating a new form of knowledge of something that hasn't existed before. But however, what happens with it is that in the moment that we get it, and that may be the geometry that pulls us in and holds us there, the sticky glue of the picture could be the geometry, perhaps. The moment we understand it, it slips right back into having to figure it out again.
That's lovely.
And I did write something this morning, and it was actually this morning. And I wonder if could I read it?
Oh, you should, because the spontaneity is great, but half the time we leave a subject that's very fruitful behind, and we get onto something else.
It's about 2 photographs that one of which is the one of Piria with the hair, the black hair, right? And then the other one is in a book called Waterline.
Oh yeah.
It has them side by side, but I forgot that they were side by side, and I was trying to find a copy of the image somewhere. And if I needed to show it, I could show it. But it's this image here.
Oh, that one. Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay? And it's opposite this one, which is in the new book.
Yeah, well, I love that picture. Oh, God.
So I put them side by side and I wrote, so now here they are side by side, same size, however.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
better.
And so I wrote this. It looks long, but it will read fast.
Right, read it.
I'm going to read it. On a vast lake, in a deep forest, these are two pictures made of us by my camera on the same late spring, early summer afternoon, as I recall, some 30 years ago. You wouldn't know it from the weather, and yet the hand, mine, which clasps and cradles your neck and chin, to my surprise now, is the same size in both pictures. Even my hand's placement falls on the exact same portion of the negative the moment the shutter opens and the light of day floods in, as if they were taken moments after each other. A slower shutter and an impatient one now ruled the exposures. Your hair blows wild in the wind and later behaves as if just combed in the morning before a mirror. In the first one, our faceless bodies are surrounded by gentle waves. We know there's no photographer behind the camera. That's because the shutter bulb is behind my back in my other hand. In the second one, you're facing the lens and the camera with a photographer out of sight, holding your chin at the very moment the camera fires. I remember the reason why. It was very simple. I wanted to bring your face out from the darkness of the forest into the sunlight. I never looked at these two photographs side by side as a pair, as a kind of diptych messenger, but it's my hope that they can speak to a love one can have as a man for all women.
Oh, that's wonderful. So in that one where she's facing the sunlight,
Yeah.
I like it for many reasons. First of all, it took me a little time to realize that hand was too big to be hers, and that was likely yours because that's what you do. Okay. But if you look at her face, okay, look at her face now.
Yeah.
Right. You may know this about portrait photography. One half of the face is one personality, and the other half is a different. It is amazing how often great photographers can put that in there, and you just like the picture, but you don't see that that was a situation where there were two faces available. But you're careful with the light, because the light going down your arm and everything is perfect for that thing.
It was made before I got really interested in, well, I started teaching history photography as well. And then I became enamored of Julia Margaret Cameron and her Mountain Nymph Sweet Liberty. I discovered something like that. And so it wasn't driving this one. I wouldn't have been able to know that anyway. But I didn't look at this picture from that particular way of looking at it. I'm delighted that you saw that in it, and I'll have to write to her, you know, and let her know this. You know, I did a when I was in Finland, I was invited to curate a show, and it was called Elegant Intimacy, and it had to do with the fact that when you photograph someone over a period of time, you don't need a model release. So people with whom I've sometimes made pictures with, in addition to my son and occasionally with Sandy, are people that I've known and I get to know. And it's why I would never look at any of the ones in that section of the book as being model. They're friends.
That's how you can get those pictures. I mean, if you do it with a model, you have to be Irving Penn to get away with it.
You know, working with someone. There's that picture in the show. My fingers are in touch with. In a way, it goes to the sentiments of the text that I read about the picture of Piria. My fingers are in touch with her name is Ren, and we're in Gulan on a river, you know, in a motorboat that's being driven by there's tons of these in that section. And my Beijing gallerist is there. It was a trip, you know, and she, I had asked if there was someone that I could work with and get to know, and so it was like a 5-day thing, and so we were on the river, and directing someone, where the comment's now coming from, what you were saying, right? To direct someone, it was spontaneous. It was a spontaneous kind of thing, I'm trying to say, well, what can I do here? And there's the panic. The panic is, I'm in Gulan, I'm in China, I'm on this boat, and it's wavy and choppy, and I got a camera that I'm trying to keep on a tripod to keep it still. I say, no, I can't. Hell with the tripod.
Yeah.
What can I do? And so I take my hand, and in that moment of taking the hand, I say, give me yours. And she sees my hand.
And it's done.
And it's done.
Sometimes they're spontaneous, like you say. And I said, that's a gift. That's a real gift, that when it happens in that spontaneity like that. So that's, we got to rely on those gifts as photographers, right?
Sure. In this
so
one,
how did the
in China, in this one in China, the meaning comes afterwards very often for me.
Yes.
Right. And so I see an old man in touch with a young woman over an ancient river and an ancient, and I see, like, I can't help but see the words at the end.
For the ancient river, if the river could speak, it would say, I don't see much difference in your ages. You're like a spark in history, the two of you. So,
okay.
The picture, I know that your son, when your son was born, almost like when Callahan's daughter Barbara was born.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Very
it was the greatest thing in his life. And he photographed her over and over again, and that you couldn't help it. And I can see that in your response too. But the ones of adults, men and women both, when did that start? It seems like a mid-career.
It did start with that image of Birya. Yeah, it started then. I had made some photographs with a close friend that were, to me, not successful in the full sense. There are 1 or 2 pictures from it that could be drawn up that way. And then with Sandy, very early, we made pictures together, and it was more about my underwear fetish and that kind of thing, that I felt it was essential in the book. The last one is kind of like
I saw that at the end.
Yeah.
Oh, this coming back. But yeah, I thought it was brilliant, and the fact of the matter that you didn't have to relate it to an inert nature, so to speak. The nature that could be there without us. But here we are. We can't be without each other. And I thought, wow, it's almost as if that's another career starting. But it's a delicious chapter in that book. I thought that inclusion of those portraits, which I only knew maybe 1 or 2, and I thought, oh, this is a one-off kind of thing. No, this was a beautiful thing to do with the things that you developed for yourself that were not the recluse anymore. This is a union kind of thing. And I said, wow, this is powerful, because there are no portraits like those in the art history of photography. You'll find 1 or 2 where somebody's hand is in there and something like that, but not as the point of the picture, not as the point of the friendship, not as the point of the connection. So that made me feel great. I mean,
I'm delighted to hear that. Kiitos is in Finnish, it means thank you from the bottom of my heart.